Hello and welcome to the auto sleeving tool tutorial and promo video. Here I'm going to explain how to make use of our tool, the auto sleeving tool, which is this right here. And we're going to explain how to make use of it in this project that has a few examples laid out. There's a project that is a linked file, an example pre-constructed room, an example of a radial rotation of duct parts, and a wall of a bunch of different ducts to show, like, en masse what you can do. Alright, so the first things we're going to want to do is probably explain the base sleeve settings here. Here you can choose for the round duct, for the round sleeves and the square sleeves, what you want to use for horizontal and vertical. The difference between horizontal and vertical is mainly, is in fact only, the 2 points that you get. So horizontal will have 2 points for Trimble, which will be the front and back of the sleeve, and the vertical only has 1 point of Trimble, which will be just the front of the sleeve, where it makes contact with the wall. So if you want a vertical sleeve to have a top and bottom Trimble point in your Trimble export, you'll want to switch that to horizontal, and it'll make use of the horizontal sleeves for that case as well. But in our case, we're just going to keep it as horizontal and vertical. And over here we have the discipline sleeve settings. So for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, you can pick whether or not you want round or square sleeves to be used on them. Generally, we want square ones for mechanical, since that's duct. So any duct and stuff will be square instead of round like the pipes would get. Alright, so let's show building a new sleeve part, because you'll want to have sleeves populated if you have, well, it's only if you care to have sleeves that are specific dimensions, which I would imagine most people would want, but in the event you don't have to add sleeves, as there is a default auto-sized one, and it will just give you the base version of the sleeve adjusted to match the requirements of the scenario where the part is intersecting the wall. But if you're probably going to want a actual pre-designed sleeve, so in that case you're going to want to do build new sleeve part here, and in here you can create a sleeve part named like test sleeve, and you can set the units it's going to use to millimeters in our case, as this project's in millimeters, and we will set the name in units. And now up here you can see it's been named test sleeve, and the units it's using is millimeters. And if you ever want, you can change these. Like this, and you can set it and it will be just reapplied. But right now we're just going to keep it as it is. And then you can set the host here. So for the host width and height, this is what's really important when it's trying to find the correct sleeve to use. So in our case, in this situation, let's say we have this pipe here, and we want this specific pipe to get a specific sized sleeve on it. What you can do is you can figure out the overall outer diameter, which for this sleeve is 130. So you'll probably want to have a sleeve that's a little bit larger than 130, so maybe like 131 in this case, so that when the program looks at this part, it'll see 130. It will see that the sleeve is larger than this pipe, which means it can use that sleeve for it. Because if the sleeve is too small, which in one of our examples we'll have, you can see that, and that will actually show a pre-built version of test sleeve in that example. And you will see that if the pipe is too large for all of the sleeves, it will attempt to use the default auto sleeving sleeve for those scenarios. We'll see that a bit more in detail in a bit, but for now let's keep going through the explanation of the sleeve part creator. So in this case, we could put 125, which would be too small for that pipe, which will cause that one to fail, but the other ones below it should pass into the width. And we could put like 0 or 10 or any number we really want. Since it's a pipe, it's not going to use the height. For duct, it would use the height. And what it's basically going to do is it's going to look at this host element to see if the pipe is this size. It will then make use of it, of this sized sleeve. So let's say we want our sleeve to be like 10 millimeters larger in the width direction and 10 millimeters larger in the height direction, or whatever we want, right? We can actually apply that here, and so when it sees a host that's 125 or so, it will give it a sleeve of 135, which gives you that internal space between the sleeve and the pipe that you would probably want for your sleeve. And then here we've got the extension on the top and the bottom. In our case, we don't really need the sleeve to be jutting out of the wall, so we're going to leave this 0. And then you've got sleeve wall thickness. That's the actual thickness of the sleeve itself. We'll say, I don't know, 10 millimeters is probably good. I mean, it's maybe small, but it's whatever. And then we have the water stop thickness, which we can make whatever we want. I don't know, 30. Why not? What this thickness is the actual... So, for the center, like, metal panel on the sleeve that's supposed to stop the water, you can set the actual thickness of that section. So if you want to make it like... if you want to make it like 2 inches thick or so, that's how you would basically set it here. And then on this section is where you actually set how far out of the sleeve it will extend. So we'll set this to 30 as well. So if you wanted to make it like 2 inches longer, you would put the 2 inches here, and it would extend that water stop out from the sleeve that far out, so that you could make use of it. If you had like a custom water sleeve or something. So we can just add the row after that, and you'll see it added all that information. And we can set up like another example one, like 20 or whatever. If we want like a smaller sized one available. And let's say that the height will stay the same, that's fine. You just add another row, and then you can export a sleeve, and it will create a CSV. Now, I've already got a CSV of a kind of example test sleeve like this, so we'll just make use of that one for now. So the add sleeve part you can use to actually load those sleeves. So after you've exported the sleeve, you've now got a saved version of that sleeve list. So all the different sleeve sizes for that specific model of sleeve, you now have that stored away, and you can make use of it by loading it here with add sleeve part. And we've already got like an example one here. And let's go ahead and actually, I'll look at it in a second. We'll go ahead and load that. So we'll load that one. And so now that's been added into the project, which you can see in a few different places. You can see it in remove sleeve, where you can actually choose to remove this sleeve. You just click the button and it'll remove it from the project. Or you can see it in the sleeve to use, which you can now choose to use the test sleeve variation. And let's go ahead and give it a quick look. Actually, you know what? We'll do that in a second. You can also choose to save project sleeve list. And what that will do is it'll save all of the different sleeves in the project into a CSV as well. So what you can do is add maybe sleeve model A and sleeve model B and sleeve model C are 3 different sleeve parts you have, and those lists have their own sizes and stuff. And you've added them into this project. Well, now you don't want to add those in individually in the next time you load, even the next time you load this program. So what you might want to do is save a project sleeve list, and what it'll do is it'll save all of the sleeves that are loaded currently into a single file. That way, when you load the project sleeve list, you'll load all of the sleeves that are included in this project. So you can load all 3 of those sleeves in that scenario. Let's go ahead and look at the sleeve right now. So right now, the information for it. Oops, it's not the one I wanted to open. Hold on a second. It's back on the thing. So this one, we can open this with Notepad, and we can see that it's just a semicolon separated list of elements. The different, so the name of it, the units it's using, the different headers that explain what each of these items are, and then the data itself, which is the size, 125 millimeters, 150 millimeters, and stuff like that for the host width, host height, and in that order. And the version it was saved on in this program is 1.0, so it's saved on version 1.0. And they also have an example of the project sleeve list, but I only had one in it open at the time. Also, let's look at it in Excel. So this is basically the same because this project only ever had one sleeve list, one sleeve part loaded. So the sleeve project list was one sleeve long. But you can see here, you just switch it to delimited, semicolon, finish, and now you've got the list set up in a way that you can make sense of it. Basically, you shouldn't have to really edit these at any point, but if you ever wanted to, you could just adjust these. If you know what you're doing, you know, make sure that it's in the same format it was before, because you might cause an issue. But essentially, if you just change like 120 or 125 or whatever these numbers might be to whatever new number you need, you should be fine. However, I assume that you're not going to need to rebuild your sleeve list, so it's probably not a big concern, but it is doable if you're interested in adjusting them for whatever reason. So, just so you know. Okay, let's point out some of the sleeve creation things here. So, if you don't want a water sleeve on a water stop on your sleeve, what you can do is you can just click this and it will turn off the water stop on the default sleeves. If you have a preset list of sleeves, it will not work on it because those have been defined with the sleeve wall stop being in or not. So keep that in mind. But the default auto-sized one will remove the water stop from it, but we don't need to do that, so we'll leave that off. Include installation will mean that it will check the insulation for the actual sizing. So on this, it was, I think, 130. So this is 130 millimeters. Let's say I have a 10 millimeter insulation on it, right? Then the actual size of this pipe is 140 millimeters. So if the sleeve is trying to auto sleeve it and it's seeing that it's not 130, it's actually 140, it's going to try to place a larger sleeve on it. So if you're including insulation, keep that in mind, that it will try to look to a higher host size because the host is now a larger size. And then there's lock sleeve once placed to prevent resizing, because when you have a sleeve placed, what you can do is use the adjust sleeve diameter size here to adjust the height and width in the units you like to make a sleeve larger in some way. Like, let's say that I placed a default sleeve and it was exactly the same size as this pipe, but then I want to increase the sleeve by 2 inches in width and height. I can set 2 in both of these boxes in inches and then just hit apply on the sleeve. And I'll show an example of this in a bit. But if it is a locked sleeve, it will not allow me to do this. It won't allow me to apply that. And you can also flip them in a few different ways. There's two buttons here to like flip the selected sleeves from locked or unlocked, or to set their state to locked or unlocked. But you also have a few settings on the left in your project, in the type settings for the actual sleeves too. So we'll see that in a second when we get an actual sleeve placed, which we might actually do in a second here. Attempt to follow part rotation on fab parts. Now, fab parts are the only parts that have a rotation in them. If you're using this on a Revit pipe or a Revit duct, it can't figure out the rotation, so it will not be able to make use of that, so keep that in mind. But on a fab part, it can actually make sense of what's going on here, and it'll put a 45-degree rotated sleeve onto this duct. Sometimes it can be incorrect. We've been trying to work out this little issue in it, but it's been kind of difficult to get the rotations down because it's like quadrants, and if you rotate the pipe or duct in some specific way, it changes the quadrants and stuff for it. It is a bit of a complex situation. We've figured it out for the most part, but it's still got like this small factor to it. But we didn't want to delay the program coming out and stuff, so we figured we'll just leave this as it is because we've got other things we've got to focus on. But this will do the job, so it has worked for us 100% of the time. It's just an unfortunate little step we have to put in currently. At some point in the future, we may remove this little subset, but the rotate pre-selected and the rotate counterclockwise and clockwise are rotation fixes for that situation. You'll definitely see some examples of it. We will address those as it happens. But if you turn off attempt to fall apart rotation, it will just place the sleeve on the wall as just like a flat placement. It's not going to check for rotation or anything. So if I put a sleeve on this, that the sleeve will actually like just be flat. In fact, I could show you it since we're looking at it. Why not? Let's quickly mention this here on the left. So the walls to sleeve, this section is loaded when you start this program. It will check the current document and all the linked documents to see what kind of walls there are, and it'll populate this list with those walls. And what you can do is you can select the walls that you care about creating sleeves on, and you can use Control to select multiple. You can click and drag if they should be in the same in an order, and you can click on them again with Control to like unselect them and stuff like that. You can also, like let's say I want standard, but I also want all the STBs. You can also use the search tool here, and it will select all the things with STB. So if there was something up here with STB, or in this case I guess stud is up there, so I could just do stud, and now those items are selected as well. You can just add and remove them as you need. And what you can also do is save the selection, and that'll create a text file that you can load that will select all these items again. So if you have a specific set of walls in a project that you care to put sleeves on, like a CMU walls, this was an example of some of the sleeves we had in our projects. They were all named with CMU. We can just hit CMU in here. It'll select all of those walls. You save that selection, and then the next time you start the project or the program or whatever, you load the selection again, and now you've got all those walls ready to go again. So that can set it up for you nice and quick. And then you can also select all and clear selection with these buttons. In our case, we just want to show any wall, so we're just going to go ahead and select all. And then we're going to go ahead and create our first sleeve here. So what we can do is we can select it. We can select this part and then use current selection. So if you have like a weird situation, let's say, because normally it's using a box selection or just pick selection, but if we have a lot of parts and we want to make like an L shape or something, what we can do is we can pre-select the items we want, and then it can do set to current, and it'll store them in the program so that when you hit start sleeving, it'll sleeve these specific elements. Now, it will run these through a filter to see if these can be sleeved like that, but after it's succeeded in doing that, it will be able to use them for sleeving. And you'll be able to tell if it's selected things or not, because let's say, in fact, I can show this. So let's say I select like these two ducts and the wall, and I set to current. You'll see that the wall is no longer selected. That's because it's selected all of the items that it can select, which is these two ducts. But you're probably best off generally using pick elements, where you can do a box selection and a single item selection. The default selection is a box selection. So if you use yes, it will just create a box selection. You start box selecting the items that you want to get. If you say no, it'll give you the ability to individually pick the elements that you want to select for sleeving. If you hit cancel, it'll cancel, obviously. In this case, we'll do no, since we only want to select a few items. And we're going to select this duct. In fact, we're only going to select just this duct. And we'll do finish selection. And then we'll start sleeving, right? I think, let's just make sure that everything's good. Okay, so let's show the example of what happens if you don't have rotation on. So I start sleeving. It says there's a sleeve created. Would you like to select it? If you hit yes, it will automatically select all of the created sleeves that just happened. If you hit no, it'll just move on, and you'll just continue on from where you are. So as you can see, this duct would have been inside of this sleeve, but the sleeve is not rotated correctly. Now, if you wanted to manually do this, you could do this and just use the rotation tool and say, like this side to that side, and then there you go, you're done. But it's even more efficient. Most of the time, you're not going to have an issue with the rotation. But if you do have an issue with the rotation, you can fix it. It's a very subtle situation. I mean, you'll see an example of the rate that this issue can happen in our example of circular duct here, which we'll show in a little bit. But you'll see an example of what the issue is with those rotations and how easy it is to quickly fix them. So let's go ahead and turn on following rotation, and we'll sleeve again. Now it's currently still got that same element selected. So if we click start, it'll sleeve it again. And this time, you see, it put a sleeve at a 45-degree angle onto this duct. So in one button push, I have a sleeve placed at a location. It is placed at the correct rotation, and or could have been rotated very easily back into place. And as well as that, it has placed that sleeve inside this. What? Oh, sorry, rotating a little bit weirdly. It has placed that sleeve into the wall here, created the correct length, and has set it to its default settings, which is 2 inches of water stop there. And you'll also note that the sleeve has those 2 points on it. So those little orbs, I can actually move this up and show you a better example. This one. No, this one. Sorry. Oops. Alright, so as you can see, these little orbs, those are the Trimble points. Also, I can explain the sleeves themselves now. So on a vertical sleeve, you would have only had 1 point, not 2. In fact, I could show you that while also explaining this. So if you have a sleeve selected, you can use the adjust selected sleeves area, and you can use switch vertical horizontal, and what that will do is it will take the selected elements and it'll switch the sleeve vertical horizontal state. So this is horizontal. If I click this, it's now vertical, and so as you can see, the Trimble point would be on this side for the vertical. and there isn't one on the other side. So that can show you where those Trimble points are going to be if you're ever concerned about that. Let's go ahead and switch it back though, because I don't really need it to be that currently. And what we can see here is, so for this sleeve, here's all the dimensions and information, the inner height and width and stuff like that. Generally, you're not going to mess with these, but they're there if you need to. In fact, if you ever need to like adjust like the top extension, you can set that to like, I don't know, 30, and it'll extend that top section there. And put it back. So if you ever need to adjust any of the dimensions, that's right there. But the most important information is right here in the general and visibility. So with visibility, you can turn off that Trimble point so that if you're doing a presentation, you can see it as it is and not with Trimble points in it. And you can turn that back on. So that's useful if you're ever concerned about visibly seeing those. I usually like to keep them on, but you know, to each their own. And so the general information, you can see the applied sleeve part. So this is the sleeve part here that was used. In this case, we used default auto-sized. So it is default auto-sized. And you can lock the sleeve adjustment here, because this is the sleeve adjustment lock. You can turn that on or off depending on what you want. And the stored metric that was used, so millimeters, that's not important in this particular sleeve. It'll be more important for the test sleeve, or sorry, the pre-built sleeves that you have added, because those will have actual sizing on them. This is just automatically sized to fit the duct and stuff, so it doesn't really make sense for the millimeters to matter. But when you have a pre-sized thing, a pre-sized sleeve, it will have the information numerically on it for what size it is, and you can make use of that information as you need. And there's also the Trimble sleeve note section here, where you can say sleeve to add or something like that, sleeve to add in V2 or something, whatever you want to like add to your note for your Trimble points, because now this sleeve will have this added into its notes when it exports the Trimble points. If you have that turned on, because you can choose to turn on or off, including Trimble points. Or the sleeve note, rather. Sorry. And then also in here you can see the lock and unlock button. So if you ever have like a few different sleeves, you can pre-select. All of these settings can be used on pre-selected sleeves, so you could set up a few different sleeves. In fact, let's just quickly throw out some sleeves. Okay, so let's say that I want to sleeve these 4 ducts here. And we'll just sleeve that. There we go. And what you can do is you can have all of these items selected, and you can make your adjustments to the sleeves that you have as much as you want. So you could also do this too, where you have your sleeves already exist in here, you don't have them selected, and you want to select them. Well, there's an easy, quick selection tool here, where you can just click this button. It'll ask you the general like selection box or not. You say yes for selection box in this case, and you can just selection box only select those sleeves or whatever you want to do, because it's filtered. So that's really useful if you need to select multiple sleeves. And let's say I want to lock all of these sleeves so that they can't be adjusted with the sizing being changed. So now if I look at the sleeve, each of these sleeves has been locked and will not allow me to adjust them. And I can show you an example of the sleeve adjustment size adjustments here actually. So let's go ahead and we'll unlock those, because why not? Just for the sake of making it easier. And we will select this sleeve, and we'll say we'll say I want to increase the width of it by, I don't know, 4 inches, and increase the height of it by 6 inches. And I can just hit apply while it's selected, and it will now make that adjustment to it. And if we had the sleeve lock on it, it wouldn't allow us to do that. But as you can see here, it has now made a note that this is default auto-sized, adjusted, and it gives you the width and height that it was adjusted by in the metrics that it was currently stored in. So this was stored in millimeters, so it took the 6 and 5 inch, the 4 and 6 inches that I put in, and it converted those into millimeters and has now put them in the adjustment label so that you know how much it's adjusted. So you could also, now that you know what those sizes are, if you have done like some translations to the size, you can adjust it back by that amount, and now it's back to basically normal. And in fact, it says that it is default auto-sized, so it doesn't even have any adjustments to it anymore. But you could lock it, and it won't allow you to adjust it. So we'll put it back to like 6, 4. And I could actually just leave this empty. And then it says some of them were locked, and it gives you the ID of the few that it has. Now, if it gets large enough, the list of IDs, you're going to not have all of the IDs listed. It's just kind of giving you a little hint like, hey, if you've got a few of them that are locked, this is a situation. You should try to deal with that. But we'll unlock it, and then we'll apply our adjustment as we want, and there we go. See, no problem. And then also, if you have pre-adjusted it to whatever, maybe I adjusted it again, I made it even wider, and I want to undo all of my adjustments, I can just hit no adjust, and it'll clear it. So now it's back to just being the default size that it was originally. So that's very useful if you have like a custom adjusted sleeve or whatever. If I wanted to add like, if I just wanted to throw on the default sleeves, right, and I knew that each sleeve had to be 1 inch away from the sides on all of my items, I could throw in a bunch of default sleeves that are automatically made, sized to the pipe and duct as it's needed, and then I just toss on a 1 inch separation on all of them. And now they're all spaced away from the duct 1 inch. So that could be really useful if you're trying to quickly throw together something, but you don't have dimensioned sleeves yet. Because as you would know, this is automatically sized. Those sleeves aren't actual created items. I mean, if you make custom sleeves, this is great, because you can just build custom sleeves to match these dimensions, essentially. But if you don't have that, and you're using a preset one, you're going to want to use a pre-built sleeve part that you make with the dimensions that are correct. Alright, let's go ahead, and I think we've kind of covered most of this. So I think what we got left now is basically just kind of showing these actual items in... Oh, actually, before I finish this, what I can do is I can actually, here, select those sleeves, delete those, and we'll pick one of these just to kind of show off a little example of something. Alright, I picked it, finish. And let's say I wanted to adjust it. You can adjust the round and square here, and so now I can get a round sleeve placed onto this duct if I wanted to, for whatever reason. And now I've got a round sleeve on the duct. So that's useful. I can get a square sleeve on the pipes as well if I want. So that's pretty useful if you have different design sleeve shapes that you require for those elements. Alright, so let's go ahead and start doing some of the core examples. We can cover this one in that section. So let's go ahead and show the test sleeve. Alright, so we've got these 4 pipes here, and as noted when we made these test sleeves information, the dimensions for it were 125 and 120. Well, this pipe will fail that, but these other pipes should pass it. Because I think, what is the size of this pipe? This one's 105. So this one should pass all of the lowest sizes. This one's 130, and our top size is 125. So this one will fail this. And what we can do is we can pick the elements. Yes. We'll pick these, and we'll go ahead and sleeve it. Just make sure everything's set. Start sleeving. They've all been sleeved. And you'll see here that it is using these sleeves, which were predefined, and you can see this one's different because this is default, because this sleeve wasn't available and there were no larger sleeves available to it, so it used the automatic default for it. And as you can see in the information, it's kind of pointed out as well. So this is test sleeve, because that's the type of sleeve it is used, and it says 140, so that's the size of sleeve of test sleeve that was used, which, as you would note, was our sleeve size setting in the part builder. Right, so right here, sleeve width and sleeve height. And in this case, since it's a pipe, it's sleeve width that it's using. So it's a 140. And if we ever make adjustments to it, it'll be 140 and adjusted by a certain amount or whatever, but you can lock the adjustments so you can't do that. But you'll note that it's 140 in millimeters, so that if you're ever worried about like what size is this 140 in inches or millimeters, well, the information's right here. But these ones got 140s because these ones were able to fit, but this one didn't, so it's the default auto-sized one. There's also a cool little feature that's added in here where you can actually select sleeves. So you know how you filter sleeves? Well, you get all 5 of these, but maybe we have an issue with the default sleeve that was added and we don't want those added for whatever reason. What we can do is we can actually set this to select only default sleeves, filter select, and as you can see, it's not selecting those sleeves, but it is selecting this one. So now you can select the default ones after you've sleeved, and you can just delete it if you don't want it. So that's something to keep in mind. But it's only going to happen if you ever have pipes that can't fit a sleeve size that you have available. So just keep that in mind. You can easily remove them. It's not a big deal. So never feel like it's holding you back in any way. Okay, we've basically covered all of the main parts of the program, or all of the main definitions to all of the parts of the program. So the tutorial part is coming to a conclusion, essentially. And we're starting to partially get into the promo. There will still be a few quick examples of the rotation fix and the create Trimble points coming up. But, in fact, these are the next things we're going to cover. But it's going to also start getting a little bit promo now, where we're showing some of the features that you can use this on. So, in our example, we have this area here, which is a fairly interesting situation. I don't imagine anyone would do this, but this is something you can work with. So let's go ahead and show off what it can do on a let's show it what the wall one looks like first. Right? There's a few items here on the side. In fact, let's go ahead and actually no, it's fine. We'll do this. So we have this duct here that's going in a very fancy circle here, and that's going through the wall right there, as you can see, and we want to sleeve all of these ducts. Well, that's no problem. we just go here. We've got our sleeves. We're going to use default auto size for pretty much everything from this point forward, just because it's simple. I don't have to build custom, because I don't have any actual dimensioned items. So we'll just use this for now. And we're going to go ahead and pick elements. Yes, I will box select, and I will box select all of these items. And there we go, they're all selected. And we'll sleeve those. And it's done. It created 36 sleeves. Now, you'll notice of these sleeves it created, they're all pretty well placed, except for a handful. So there are 5 sleeves that did not get correctly placed for whatever reason. And this happens. It's an unfortunate thing, but it's a situation we're trying to deal with. We're going to fix it at some point, but you can get through this no problem. All you have to do is you can choose to do one at a time for whatever reason if you wanted to do that. You'll usually want to use counterclockwise. That usually fixes it. If a counterclockwise doesn't work, just undo it and then do a clockwise rotation. That will fix it for sure if the other one did not. So we'll show like a quick point out of what you can do with just the button and what you can do with the pre-selection. So let's say there's just one that had been placed. Let's say this third one here was wrong and everything else was just fine. Well, I can quickly fix that by just clicking rotate counterclockwise. It'll go into a selection mode and it'll filter sleeves, and you just select that one and it'll rotate it. And as you see, I happened to pick one that was not correct to use that one on. So I just undo it, and I will use the clockwise version, and it'll rotate it, and it's fixed. See? No problem. And let's say I want to fix a bunch of them because a few had happened. Well, I can just select all 4 of them. In fact, I could just use the filter selected, set it in the single mode, and just click them. Oops. And then I finish, and now they're all selected, and now I can do rotate pre-selected, and that'll take whatever you've already got selected and allow you to rotate en masse. So instead of clicking this and getting a selection tool, you'll click this and it'll take what you have and rotate them. So we'll rotate all of those 4 sleeves counterclockwise, which wasn't the direction we want to use. So we'll just rotate them back, select previous, and rotate the other direction, and now they're fixed. So that's like a simple little situation. It wasn't too crazy, no problem to fix that. Now let's say we're looking at this, however. So from the vertical, we got all these vertical ones. This one had a bit of a different experience with it when we sleeved it. So let's pick elements. We'll pick all of these on the floor, and we will start sleeving, and they've been sleeved, and it's great. And as you can see, the top half has been incorrectly placed. Once again, this happens, but as you can see, I think it's something, we believe it might be something to do with like a negative rotation that's happening, but it's kind of weird that the ones over here only had 5 situations, whereas this one had the entire other quadrant, other half rotation. It's a weird situation. We are looking into it, but it's not a big deal because you can just quickly fix that by selecting sleeves. Yes, and we'll just select those sleeves, and we will rotate counterclockwise, runs through them, and they're all fixed. Done. See, and then in a matter of seconds, I have just sleeved 36 ducts with correctly placed sleeves that are also correctly sized for the walls that they are intersecting. So that's pretty powerful. So let's go ahead and show the Trimble point export, and then we'll go ahead and finish up with the actual promo section where we show the actual uses in the other scenarios, now that we have a few sleeves placed. So we'll look at the vertical wall. We'll go ahead and select that. In fact, we could select... let's just select a few, because we don't really have to make it that intensive. We don't have to do a whole bunch of them. So we'll filter select sleeves. Actually, no, we'll just do this part of the wall. It's fine. Alright, we'll just select however many. It doesn't really matter. It's an example test situation. And then we'll create a Trimble point CSV. So click it, and it starts loading through them and reading them for information. And it gives us the little file export. Hold on a second. Let me go ahead and get us to the area. Alright, so we're here. So let's go ahead and create this. Will be our test Trimble wall. Save it. And now we can open that. Test Trimble wall. Open with Excel. And as you can see, this one's also separated by semicolons, so we can just hit the data, text columns, semicolons, done. And as you can see, each element has its ID given to us, and whether or not it's the top or bottom Trimble point of it, of that item, of the sleeve. I don't know why I was calling it item. So it gives you the information of that sleeve. The top Trimble point, its XYZ coordinates. The bottom Trimble point, its XYZ coordinates, and so on for the rest of them. You'll also notice there's a note/code part here that's empty, because when you don't have any notes or anything, and also when you don't have the note export set to on in the program, it won't output anything. So you can just set whatever you want yourself. If you want to like set up anything for the Trimble point reader, you can put that here however you want to do. But another thing you can do is you could actually have some of these sleeves. Let's say this one has a note that we want to make on it. So this will be include in V2. And let's say we're going to add this. Actually, we'll leave that one. We'll leave that one include in V2, and then this one we'll do include in V3. Include V2, but then we'll make that a 3. Just for like the sake of it. And then we'll grab a few sleeves. I have done that wrong, sorry. Pick element, no, not that one. Alright, so we'll pick a few sleeves. That should include them. We'll include Trimble sleeve note, and then we'll create the Trimble sleeve points again. And then we will export test Trimble wall with note. Save that. And now, if I look at that CSV, and I go through this, semicolon, finish, you'll notice something here, that there is a few of them with a note. So this is the one that's included in V3, this is the one included in V2. So nice and simple way to add some notes to your Trimble points that you export from here if you need to do something like that quickly, or just to reference them. If you really wanted to name these, you could, however you want to do it. But you can actually bake that information into the actual project, and then when you do a CSV, or when you do a Trimble export, it will have that information here. So that should be pretty useful. Alright, so now, I think with that, I believe we've pretty much covered everything that's included in this list of items. So now you should be able to make use of this tool to sleeve any elements that you want in your project. Oh, the last thing I didn't mention was the About section. So there's an About Settings tab. This is pretty self-explanatory, but it has information on our website, our YouTube channel, where you'll have this tutorial and promo video, and the reports for any issues you have. You can email us. And that's pretty much all the information for it. So let's go ahead, and I will keep this. Well, I'll put it on the side. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the actual promo section and kind of go through some examples of situations you might want to sleeve on. So those are pretty interesting examples, but this one is, I think, a pretty good example of one of the benefits of this program, in that it can deal with linked files. So here is a linked file that has some walls in it. So as you can see, when I click, it selects everything because it's a linked file. But this wall here, these pipes and electrical and duct are going through the wall here, and we do want these sleeved for our example situation. So let's go ahead and have all the walls selected, because, you know, I mean, I know which one this one specifically is. It's the remake one, I think. Maybe not. It might be one of these two. It's one of the top two. I know that much. But we're going to select them all anyway. And then we'll go ahead and pick elements. We'll pick each one. Finish. And then we'll start sleeving. And there you go. And as you can see, this sleeve got placed incorrectly, so we'll just grab that one, pre-select, and we will rotate counterclockwise. Nope, that's the wrong direction. I'm surprised. All of these are usually counterclockwise. It's rare to have it go clockwise. Just inconvenient situation, I guess. But either way, as you can see, the duct has been sleeved correctly, the pipe has been sleeved, and in the case of electrical, while these are square, you'll have to remember that we have the discipline for electrical set to round. So these have been set to round. You'd have to specifically select the electrical individually if you wanted these to be square, let's say. So let's say we set it to square, and we can pick those elements, finish, start sleeving, and then there you go. Now you've got square versions of sleeves going through there. And as you can see, they're all sized to the wall, and this is a linked model. So that's pretty useful. I've even seen, in previous versions, I don't have an example of this situation, but it is a good chance that it can happen. If there were an invisible wall, if this wall, let's say I wasn't showing linked projects, in fact, no, that'd be a lot of work. Let's say that there was an invisible wall because it's in a linked project, but it is definitely in the project currently. Or there was a work set that was hidden for whatever reason, right? I have seen the program in previous examples actually put a sleeve on that wall that was invisible, that would have been missed by human eyes, but it's a situation where the program knew what was actually there. So there are actually situations you might find yourself seeing a sleeve somewhere and like, why is it here? It could be a situation where there's something invisible, but the project knows what's actually there and is dealt with it appropriately. See, because you probably actually do want a sleeve there. So keep that in mind if that ever happens. But as you can see, it dealt with the linked file well, and now we're going to show it in this situation. So here's a little like pre-built room that has, let's select the bottom floor actually. It has some duct going through, goes through the wall here. There's a wall surrounding this area, so it goes into this room. And it's got some pipes coming through that are going down to some sinks or something. It's got an electrical track coming through here, going out the wall there, and it's got an electrical box here with some wires going through, or conduit pipes going through. There's also, in an interesting example that we haven't seen yet, a pipe that's inside of the wall that's going through the wall, but it's never coming out of the wall, so it's just going from floor to floor. So you would normally want a sleeve on the bottom as it pierces the floor. It'll go in between the wall, so you don't need sleeves on the wall, and then it'll hit the next floor, you'll need sleeves there. So this is a challenging situation for the program, right? And there's also some pipes going through the floor here. So here's a good little example of an entire room that needs different sleeves, perhaps, going through these different walls, and has an interesting scenario of a riser set of pipes. So let's go ahead and see what happens if we have the entire project, or if we have this whole room selected. So we'll set this back to round, and we will pick elements, do a box selection, and we'll just box selection the entire room. We'll include those riser pipes as well. So there we go, the entire room, all of the straight parts have been selected, and we just hit start sleeving. It has placed 24 sleeves. We can select them, and as you can see, all of those sleeves are placed at locations where it's intersected the wall and the floor. So the conduit here got some sleeves placed on it from going through the floor. The riser has sleeves on it at both points where it intersects the floor, but there's no issue with it going through the wall the entire time. You've got duct being dealt with a square sleeve versus round sleeves, as it's supposed to be. Pipe going through the wall here. Electrical is getting round sleeves. Once again, if you needed square for the tracks or so, you're going to have to select those individually, but you can do that. The point is that I've just sleeved an entire room for multiple disciplines. I put in 24 sleeves in, what was that, 3 seconds? So that's kind of the power of the program, is that it can take entire rooms and sleeve them automatically without me having to think. I didn't have to sit here and place my camera and find the dimensions and place the object and then lengthen it to the size of the wall and then, you know, all that. It's a whole bunch of stuff that we just don't need to be doing. And that just saved me a ton of time. And now, instead of working on sleeves, I can work on the actual project, putting in more pipe and more duct if I need to. So that's going to save a bunch of time and in huge projects. One of the projects I've worked on had 11 stories to the building, and we needed to put sleeves in. I sleeved the entire building in, I think we had 30,000 pipes and stuff like that. I think I sleeved that one in 3 minutes. That's a job that would have basically taken 3 hours, if not 6 hours, to manually do. Because each time you place a sleeve, that's like a minute that you're going to spend doing that task. My program can do it in a second. So that's pretty fast. I think I had recently tested an example like that, but it's not an exact same scenario. And my program was able to do it in 20 seconds. So instead of 3 minutes, it did it in 20 seconds. It checked over 30,000 items. So it can be really powerful at the high end. And here's an example of it doing a lot at one time. So we've got a whole wall here. It's a bunch of ducts that are straight, different angles, extreme angles, different sizing. And as well as that, as I showed off a little bit earlier, oops, not this one, the wall is also adjusting to different sizes, and those are different types of wall. So this is a gauntlet of situations that the program's going to have to deal with. This would be a serious situation for someone to walk into and be told, you need to sleeve all of these going through all of these walls, right? And we're short on time. We've got like 20 minutes. you're going to have to do this all in 20 minutes. That's a really powerful ask to make of one of your members, one of your crewmates. Well, for this program, that's not a problem. Oh, I'm sorry, I already had it up. I don't know why I clicked that button. Alright, so let's go ahead and pick elements. Okay, box selection. We're going to select everything. So I've selected 209 items, and we're going to follow a rotation, and we should be good to go. Let's push the button. And done. It just placed 209 sleeves in 5 seconds on different varying sized walls at different varying angled duct and different sized duct as well as pipes. It also includes situations with pipe. And it has dealt with all of those situations in 5 seconds. And they are all correctly sized for the situation. See? Thin, thicker, thickest. They're all rotated the right angle. See that? So that should give you a huge savings in time in really big projects. And then if you have preset parts, you can put those in, and those will all be sized with your preset part sizes as well. So it's my belief that this program really accelerates the process of sleeving a building and takes this menial task out of a coworker's plate and lets them free up their time to do more work on the actual project, and through doing that gives you a tremendous savings in time and money, because you are paying someone to sit here and sleeve these things, and it does take a lot of time, especially because in Revit, in a big project, when you move the camera around, that's loading time. When you rotate the camera, that's loading time. When you're looking at a 3D project, that might have situations where you have to adjust the view box. That's a lot of time spent moving the world around and then loading the world because you've just moved to a new area. That can make a situation where you have a simple task of a 10-minute sleeving job, where you're just going to have to throw a few sleeves in an area, but you have so much moving the camera and stuff that it adds another 3-4 minutes, and your 10-minute job became a 15-minute job, just because you had to move the camera. And that's not assuming it takes you a bit more effort to place the actual sleeve. So there are situations where, like I said, that 11-story building, that was a 6-hour job we were looking at. I did it in 3 minutes. And now we can do it in 20 seconds. Not even, I was going to say 20 minutes, but 20 seconds. So that's pretty good. That'll give you a lot of savings, and that'll help you get your crew working on other parts, other aspects of the project. The other great thing about this, too, is you don't have to be really well trained in this situation. You don't have to train someone to place sleeves on these pipes and how to place them and how to size them and all of that. You don't need to know that. You just have the program, select the items, you push the button, and anyone, even people who don't know how to use Revit, can sleeve an 11-story building in 20 seconds. So that's a pretty powerful tool. I think it'll be of good use to you and your company, so I definitely think you should get a hold of it. We're going to also try to put in new features as time goes. We're going to try to fix that rotation thing as well, but as I said before, it's not really an issue because you can solve it by pushing one other button. Just my main point is make sure to review your sleeves after you place them. That's just the smartest thing to do. Everyone should do that. So I believe that concludes the tutorial and the promo for the auto sleeving tool. I hope you buy it. I hope you enjoy it, and look forward to any more programs that we release.